So last week we talked about the laws of Shadchanis from using the quotations from the Rama in Shulchan Aruch, where the Rama identifies a Shadchan as being no different from a sirsur. The word sirsur is Hebrew for an agent, and then we did, and so just like you have to pay an agent their commission, regardless of whether you contract with them first or not. As soon as you utilize their services, payment is due. The same thing is true with a shadchan. Even if you don't formally contract with a shadchan is like any other poel, any person who works for you. You don't have to have a contract with a worker. If you tell someone, come over to my house, my pipe burst, and they come over and you didn't sign a contract with them, you still halachically owe them the money upon their rendering of services. That's a clear halacha. Same thing is true with any service provider, any kind of broker. If they provide you with a service, whether it's a service that you can see and materialize because it's an actual piece of chattel, or whether it's an intangible service, if it's something that people would pay for, you have to pay that person upon the rendering of the services. And that's what a shadchan is. So that's why these things become payable. Now, as far as we never really clarified what the demei shadchanut is, like what is the going price to pay a shadchan? And the only thing that I can go on, because there really is no standard that I'm aware of, at least not in our community, is that in Lakewood in 2017, the standard was each family gives $1,000 US to the shadchan. We looked at a tshuva we looked at a piece from the Pischei Tshuva, who comments on these halachos of shadchanis, who talks about when you have multiple shadchanim in the mix. You have the starter, you have the closer, and sometimes you have a middleman. And how do you divide shadchanis? And there were two opinions. One is that each person gets an equal share. And the other one is that the opener gets a third and the closer gets 2/3. And we also clarify that would be divided by both families, the cost of the shadchan. There's a lot of details to these halachos. And I wanted to, if we had time, I wanted to show you two things. One is a tshuva from the Sefer Baruch Omer that I used for my daily Choshen Mishpat Shiur. It's from a Sephardi Dayan named Baruch Shraga, who's on the Jerusalem Beis Din. And he has the following question. Bachur she'eino shadchan hitzia lachavero shiduch u'mevakesh demei shadchanas. What if a person is not a quote unquote professional shadchan? He just happens to have a friend and he knows his cousin is the girl and he wants to put them together because he thinks it would be a good shidduch. Is he entitled to demei shadchanas? And Rav Shraga's conclusion is yes, he is. But we'll talk about that if we have some time. There is a series of svarim called Pischei Choshen. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Pischei Choshen is a set of 10. It's a 10-volume set. It's all about Choshen Mishpat Halacha, and it was written by Rav Bloy. It was a big posek in Yerushalayim. He's since passed away. But the final volume is on Hilchos Schirus, on hiring someone who's a service provider. And the very last chapter is Shadchanus v'Sarsirus. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that word Sarsirus correctly. I'm guessing that that's how it's pronounced. But in this chapter, he goes through various pratim of Hilchos Shadchanus and the laws of the rights of a broker. It's a 12-page set of halacha because the top halacha is not lengthy, but the bottom pieces are quite lengthy. So I thought that at least we can start doing the top part, and we'll see if we get to anything that is of interest to you. We can just jump down to the footnote. So let's take a look. Shadchanis v'sarsirus demei tivuch bichlal schirat po'alim hein. That the payment for a brokerage fee or a shadchanis fee, which is really a specific kind of broker, is included in the laws of paying a worker their wages. V'shiur scharam hu lefi minhag hamakom. And how much you have to pay a shadchan or a broker depends on the minhag hamakom. Now, in many instances, when you hire a broker, like let's say I hire a real estate broker, I have to sign a contract to give that person exclusivity and so forth. But these halachos are even when there is no contract that is signed. If there is a standard practice that when someone brings you a customer, you provide, there's a general custom to pay them some kind of finder's fee, then that becomes halachically binding as well. The reason why it's bichlal schiras poalim, in other words, there are ramifications about this. We know that there's a prohibition of baltolin, that you're not allowed to delay the payment of a service provider, of a worker. And so normally when a person completes the work, you have until the following night, until dawn, to pay that person if they took the entire day to finish that work. What is the length of time that you have to pay a shadchan for their services? And when do you pay a shadchan for their services? That's something that we'll see throughout the next part of the halacha. Let's do beis. Ikar chovat tashlum schar shadchanus mutal ala mechutanim. Who has to pay? So the answer is that it's the parents of the chassan and kala who have to pay the shadchanus. Who might I think would also be liable to pay? Chassan and kala themselves. So if you take a look, for example, at let me just see. He quotes the Sefer Erech Shai in Os Gimel. The Kosav, let me just scroll down to that. He says, the Kosav Sha'af kishe'enu yochol legabot me'hamachutan, enu yochol litvoa me'achatan. You see that? It's on page Tav. Mm-hmm. He says, let's say the father of the chassan doesn't have money. So you still, according to the Sefer Erech Shai, are not allowed to demand payment from the chassan himself. Delav adaita sha'achatan yishalim lo nachit ayin sham. Because typically a shadchan does not get involved with brokering a match with the intention of charging the chassan. Now, of course, this is an normative situation. What if the chassan is 45 years old and his parents are quite elderly? That would change, of course. Uveshut heishiv Moshe kosav sheha'av hu shlucho shel hachatan b'tziyin l'divrei hashach v'tzarech iyun. However, the Sefer Heshiv Moshe seems to disagree, because he says that when a father retains the services of a shadchan, he's the shliach of the chassan. So really, the chassan should be the liable party. Uvepischei tshuva sham kosav b'shem shut avodas hagershuni. The Misha Tava me almana schar shadchanus, the hichnisa kol asher lo lebala. So there was a case as follows: you had an almana, she had some children, and then she got remarried. So the shadchan comes to her and says, "Mazel tov, I helped make a shidduch for your daughter. Give me your half of the shadchanus fee." What does she do? She signs off all of her assets to her second husband. And he says, so she says, I have no assets. I have nothing to pay you with. I have no money. So he goes to the stepfather. He says, it's not my business. This is not my daughter. So uba litfoa mehabal chelka b'shadchanus shehela shehabal chayev l'shalim. So the Sefer Pischei Tshuva quotes that in that situation, because she signed off her assets to her second husband has to pay from those assets. But that's only because she did this kind of deceitful act. But in any other situation where there's no act of deceit, you can't pass over the bill to the other side just because one side can't afford to pay. If one side genuinely can't afford to pay, you can't coerce the other family to pay the full amount. But he also writes, do your best to try to work out a deal or a payment plan or somehow to appease the shadchan. done kishitzad echad eni yachol l'shalem im yachol litvoa me'atzad hasheni. Another sefer also deliberates. If one side can't afford to pay, can you go over to the other side? V'lohela davar borer v'siyim shahaminag l'faisis hashadchan. He says it's not clear, but do whatever you can to appease the shadchan. And uveshut avnei nezer kasav sheikar chiyav shadchanis hu ala zug. He disagrees with the Sefer Erech Shai. He says that the primary financial responsibility to pay the shadchan is on the couple that's getting married. Shalahem nasa toiva, because after all, the favor that the shadchan did was for them. Ela shamechutanim mishalmim avuram, but the mechutanim are just paying on their behalf. The nira she'ein zeh soser l'divrei hachronim shehiveti, shemikeven shesof sof nog shamechutanim mishalamim, shuv einu yachol lagavel tmehem, keven she'al das kein nachis. But he says, I still feel that this is not inconsistent with what I said before. Since the shadchan knows that he's unlikely to be able to extract money from the chassan and kala who are just starting off in their life, he only is doing this because he assumes he's going to get paid by the parents. Okay. Now, let's go a little bit further. We could take each one of these topics and develop a whole shiur. So we'll go to Gimel. Okay. Amar Ashadchan shelo yitol schar, ein sarich l'shalima. If the shadchan says, ich bin moichel, you don't have to pay me, so then you don't have to pay the shadchan. And by the way, this is quite relevant in situations where it's a friend, a mutual friend sets up a couple. When a mutual friend sets up a couple and he doesn't feel comfortable taking the money from the chassan and the kala, from the parents, then as long as he's moichel, there's no obligation. Now, obviously, out of hakaras hatov, they should get something nice for the person, or the lady. But a lot of times I know that the shadchan, when it's a woman, she doesn't want to take cash because she's a friend, but the two families buy her a very nice piece of jewelry or something like that. Okay, next, Daled. Amar l'shadchan shelo yitein lo schar, nira sheyesh ofanim shemikol makom chayav litein lo. Let's say a shadchan approaches me and says to me, I'd like to set up your son or your daughter. And the father or the mother says, you're welcome to do whatever you like to set up my child. You should just know that I'm not paying you if it works out. I don't have money. Or maybe he says, I don't believe in it philosophically that a shadchan should be paid or whatever. So there's different opinions. Nira sheyesh ofanim shemikol makom chayav litein lo. There are circumstances where the parent would still be obligated to pay the shadchan, even though the shadchan knew at the outset that the parent was not prepared to pay. So under what circumstances would that be true? So if we take a look at Oshei, he says, Ayin Perek Ches, I refer you to a previous chapter, Shehiveiti midivrei hachronim bedin osa lechaveru tova, va'amar lo mitchila shelo yishalim lo. This goes to the general halacha. You know that there's a halacha that if I provide you with a service that you find beneficial, but you never asked for it, I have a right to expect you to pay me for providing you with that service. Let's say I go and I shovel your entire driveway. You never asked me to shovel your driveway, but at the same time, you don't have a shoveling service. I realize you don't have anyone to shovel. You're getting older. You don't have koyach. I'll do you a favor. Really, the halacha requires you to pay me if I shovel your sidewalk for you. And that's true even if, let's say, hey, you're shoveling my snow, I really can't pay you for this. So there are poskim who say that even in that situation, alpi divrei achronim ulefi mashe leisi sham, nira shemetavich o shadchan haba lahatzia. He says, based on this controversy, whether or not you have to pay, even when the service provider said it's okay, you don't have to pay, the The kodem shemosar prote hatza amarlo hatzad she'eno rotze l'shalim lo schar. And before the Shadchan put forth the proposal, one of the parents said, "I'm not prepared to pay you. If you want to do this out of the goodness of your heart, you can. I'm not going to pay you." And the Shadchan goes ahead and provides all the details nonetheless. So on the one hand, it would seem that that parent is pater from paying the Shadchan. Because if the Shadchan was not prepared to work for free, he should not have provided the details of the girl that he wants to present. Ve'al kain maser shelo yishalim. Aval im la'achar shekvar shama prate hatza amalo lo amachutan o hatza dash lo hashalim l'chaschar eno yachol liftar atzmo bekach. He says if after the Shadchan presented the information and said, "Here's what I can do for you," and then one of the parents says, "I'm not in the position to pay you for this," then he would still be chayiv. Because once he heard the information and said, "This sounds really interested, I'm interested," then as soon as he said that, he becomes chayiv to pay if the shidduch goes through retroactively from the time that he said he's interested. So even if afterwards he says, "Listen, I'm not going to be able to pay you for this," nonetheless he's still chayiv. Af im lo amar Shadchan klum, v'himshech letapel b'davar v'nigmar chayiv l'shalim lo. And therefore, even if the Shadchan said nothing, but provided the service and the shidduch went through, the parent has to pay. Ve'efshar sha'afim hiskim hashadchan o asir sur lidvarav, ein ze potro ki im bekinyan v'chein ha'ela ba'orchas ha'mishpat. And there is something to be argued, and the Sefer Orchos HaMishpat says this, that even if the Shadchan says, "You don't want to pay me, you don't have to pay me," that's not enough. The Shadchan could still come around and say, "I expect you to pay me," because we didn't make a kinyan. The only way to really get yourself out of having to pay the Shadchan, when you've already heard the details and you tell him, "Sounds great, go ahead." Oh, next day you tell him, "But please be aware I can't pay you." So then you have to actually make a kinyan with him to seal the deal that you're not going to be chayiv to pay.
What kind of a kinyan would you make?
Kinyan chalipin, sign a contract. It should be done in front of two witnesses to make sure that you can substantiate it. Okay. Okay, let us go on to the next halacha. Hey, amavtiach l'shadchan schar yoter me'haragil nechluku aposkim im chayiv l'shalimo mashehitna imo. If a shadchan was promised, so like let's say for example, the regular going rate is $3,000 per shidduch, okay? But I tell the shadchan, "Listen, I need someone spectacular for my daughter. You get me a good boy, I'll pay you 10 grand. And then he finds a good boy, they make the shidduch, and the guy says, "No, I'm only prepared to pay you half of the 3,000. I was just kidding. I just wanted to make sure you'd work hard for me." So there's a machlokas haposkim im chayiv l'shalim lo mashihitna imo. It's machlokas whether the guy actually has to pay or not.
Pay the difference.
To pay the difference. That's right. It's machlokas. What's the basis of the machlokas? So here too, Rav Bloy in the footnote says, "Ein perek ches shehevesi midivrei aposkim bedina mavtiach lachavir schar yoter me'aroi lo." We brought this machlokas as far as the din of when you promise to pay someone more than the going rate. Ulegabi shadchan kosav harama she'en lo el scharo haroi. The Ramah writes he's only entitled to the going rate. He's not entitled to more. V'ashach kosav b'shem hamarshal shenosin lo kol ma shehitna. The kosav hashach lo pligi sharama iri b'mokom sheish kitzva l'shadchanus. V'arashal iri b'mokom she'ein kitzva. He says, the Shach says that even though there seems to be a machlokas between the Ramah and the Maharshal, where the Ramah says just pay him the going rate, And the Marshal says you pay him whatever you promised him. It's not a machlokes. The Rama is talking about where there is a going fixed price, and the Maharshal is talking about where there is no fixed price. So when there's a fixed price, even though you promised him more, you only have to pay him the demei shadchanis, the accepted rate. But in the Maharshal's case, where there is no standard, you have to pay him what you told him you're going to pay. Now, uvikneses hagdola kasav shaladasa poskim betam din meuberet ma'avoret the mitzvah ka'avid b'shadchin yesh bo mishum mitzvah avol sirsur in bo mitzvah noslin kol mashid na'imo ein. Okay, he goes into the whole mitzvah aspect. Since you're doing a mitzvah as a shadchin, you may not be entitled to more profit than whatever the going rate is. We're not going to go any further into that. Let's go on to the next halacha. So, os vav. Afilu lo bikesh mimenu she yitavech o she yishadech lo, chayav l'shalem sachar hara'ui. That even if there was no ask, in other words, the shadchan was not solicited, but he came of his own accord, or she came of her own accord, and she came forward and said, I'm setting up your son. I've already put them on the right course. I know that you approve of this family. So they say, of course we approve. It's wonderful. So if the shidduch goes through, the shadchan is entitled to compensation, even if they were the ones who initiated contact. It's not that I, as a parent, have to initiate contact in order to be chayev. Even if the shadchan is an aggressive type of broker and is trying to shake the trees for eligible boys and girls, the shadchan is still entitled to compensation. Okay, that's something that, again, goes to the issue of when a person provides a service, even if they were not solicited to provide that service, but it provides you with benefit, you have to pay for it. And the payment would be the going rate for that type of service. Let's go on to the next.
Is there, like assuming the shidduch goes through and they get married, is there like a 2-year warranty
I
or
was just
something?
gonna say that. I was thinking the same thing. Is there a 90-day warranty?
It's a great question. We'll see in just a minute.
That's good.
Zion. Mitavech o shadchan shehit asek v'lo hitzleach lahavi lidei gmar ein lo schar klal. If a shadchan puts in a lot of effort but cannot close the deal, he's entitled to zero. Just like in any brokerage. If I'm a real estate broker and I put in a month of my time to sell a property and it falls through, I get zero commission. Same thing is true with the shadchan. V'yesh omrim she'im bikesh mimenu leilech ulahatzia noten lanu al kol panim schar tircho. There is, however, an opinion that if I initiate with the shadchan, I say, do me a favor, please make contact with so-and-so and see if you can get the shidduch going. Even if he does and he puts in a lot of time, even if in the end he's unsuccessful, I have to pay him because I solicited him to do the work. I have to pay him at least for the hours that he put in to the effort. So who is of the opinion? He says, Ayin bebeit Yosef, this is an os test. Ayin bebeit Yosef, she'evri divrei harosh b'tshuva, u'mistapek habeit Yosef sham b'das harosh, v'nira b'sof devarav sha'arosh chasav bazeh beis tzadim. The Rosh really looks at it in two ways. De'efshar l'shalim lo schar tircho kedin yorad lahatzil v'lo hitzil. He says, if a person tries to save, your animal that's getting washed away by a flash flood and was unsuccessful, you at least still have to pay him for the time that he put in to the work. But on the other hand, since the agent didn't lose anything out of pocket, he's not entitled to any kind of compensation. So those are the two sides of the coin. And there's two ways of looking at it. And so therefore, if a person were, let's say a shadchan were to say, I put so much time, I think you should give me some money. The nice thing would be to give him something for his effort, but he can't obligate. He can't take you to Beis Din because I'm Motzi Mechaver, all of Araya. You could always say, I go like the other position where a broker is not entitled to any compensation.
And he asked to be reimbursed for any expenses that he.
So if there's out-of-pocket expense, that seems clear from both sudden that as long as I asked him to, I'm chayav to pay him. If I didn't ask him to, and he went on his own and had out-of-pocket expenses, he can't, after the fact, go and solicit me because he provided me with no benefit in the end. Let's say he decides, you know what? I know this guy in New York, and he flies to New York specially for me to try to make the shidduch and is unsuccessful. And I never asked him to do that. So then he can't expect me to pay that. But if I asked him to fly to New York, then I have to pay for his ticket. Okay, ches. Hitzia esek o shidduch v'nigmar hadavar al yedei acher. Let's say someone puts forward an idea or puts forward an idea for a business to let's say, I know this guy's business is for sale. Would you be interested? And then, or a shidduch, would you be interested? I'm happy to set it up. And then before I have a chance to go ahead and do it, someone else finalizes the brokerage, the deal. Okay. There are many different ways that the poskim look at who's entitled to what compensation. V'yesh omrim, but some say shekol sha'asa ma'aseh shal yado niskarev adavar, that anytime a person puts in an effort where the shidduch came closer as a result, so then we got to skip a couple of pages because there's a lot of notes here. Then afal pisha nigmar al yedei acher, yesh lo din matchil umetzia. Then he has the din of either an opener or a middleman. He may not be the closer to get the lion's share of the shidduch compensation, but he's entitled to something. And we're not going to go into that right now, but the bottom line is that when we looked at the Pischei Tshuva last week, he brought two different minhagim. Some say that the opener and the closer split it 50-50, the Shadchan's fee, and some say that the opener gets a third and the closer gets 2/3. And it's also irrespective of the amount of effort and time that was put in. The way you split a brokerage fee is not dependent upon the hours you put in, but whether you were able to close the deal or at least open the deal. Whoever was necessary in order for the deal to go through is entitled to compensation. Okay, and that's why, my wife once asked me to look into these whole halachas because a lot of times she's been an opener, but not a closer, where she's come up with the idea for the match, and then the one or both families decide to go with some other shadchan, and my wife is left out in the cold, and everyone forgets her. But it doesn't happen that often. It's just happened like once or twice. But in any event, that's it's an important halacha. Okay, Tess. Chayuv tashlum demei tivach v'shadchanus chal miyad im gemar ha'esek o hashidduch. Okay, when is payment due? That was what your question was, right? When is payment due? So it happens, and when is a brokerage fee due? As soon as the deal is made. Okay, that's for brokerage. So as soon as the parties sign the contract, and that creates a transaction, that's when a broker is entitled to their brokerage fee. Okay. Uvidavers man tashlum schar shadchanus im la'achar he'erisin o la'achar nisun. So now the question is, when is the shadchan due payment? After the engagement? Is that considered to be the closing of the deal? Or is the chuppah the closing of the deal? Because there are times when engagements are broken. Taloi b'minhag hamakom. It all depends on the minhag hamakom. Uv'makom she'ein minhag yicholim la'akev milashalim ad la'achar hanisuin. And when there is no prevalent minhag, a family has a right to defer payment until after the wedding. But as soon as the wedding is done, just like you pay the florist right after the wedding, you pay the shadchan right after the wedding. Right? So it all depends on the community standard. If there is no community standard, you can defer until right after the chuppah, I guess, is over, because that's when they're halachically married, or after the yichud room, right? And that's the Ramah. It's right out of the Ramah. Yud. Nitbatel hashiduch la'achar hatanoim. Lo hifsid hashadchan scharo. Now, let's say they already made the tanoim. In a lot of communities, the tanoim happened at the time of the engagement. And then the shidduch breaks off. They break off the engagement. The shadchan is still entitled to his compensation. Aval, however, the makom shenagim shelo l'shalim ad la'achar nisuin mitbatel hashidduch ein sarach l'shalim schar shadchanas. That's unless the minhag is not to pay until the wedding. But if the minhag is to pay right after they get engaged and they sign the tanoim, then even if the tanoim are broken and the engagement breaks, the shadchan is still entitled to his compensation. Okay, Yud Aleph. V'chein b'demei tivuch b'mekach, im la'achar shenigmar b'kinyan nisratzu shnei atzadim levatel hamekach, lo hifsil hamitavech scharo. And the same thing is true with brokerage. Let's say we signed the contract already, okay? And the deal is that upon the consummation of the sale of the company, let's say, or whatever it is, the broker gets a 5% commission on the sale. And then the two parties jointly decide to cancel the deal that they already signed on. So even though they have a right to do that because they're two consenting parties, but they cannot deprive the broker of his commission. He brought the deal to completion. After it was completed, they want to cancel it. You can't deprive the broker of his commission. This is very practical halachic applications in business halacha, right? Okay. Yud Beis. Niskalkel hamekach mitzad acher. If, let's say, in a case of brokerage, the purchase of the deal that the broker is trying to put together gets ruined for some outside reason, yesh omrim shetzarach hametavech litroach kedei lahachzir uletakein lekiyum hamekach. Some say that since the broker is profiting off of the signed deal, he has an obligation to do whatever is in his power to salvage the deal. In other words, let's say the parties sign the papers and the deal is completed. And then something happens. One party goes bankrupt, or there was a failure of disclosure, right? So then it turns out that even though the papers were signed, that's when the broker is due his commission. But there are reasons why the deal can be canceled even after that fact. It then becomes the responsibility of the broker to do whatever he can to salvage the deal. He's still entitled to his commission, but he also has a fiduciary responsibility to try and salvage the deal if it's at all possible.
So, in a similar vein, when it comes to shidduch, and let's say you hire the shidduch, you ask him to make the shidduch, and the shadchan does not do due diligence, and then you find out there was some sort of a pagam or a sorry in one of the parties.
That's a good question. He doesn't deal with that issue directly, but it would seem that if the shadchan, first of all, it's not the shadchan's responsibility to do that due diligence. It's really the family's responsibility to make sure the shadchan acquires that information. Let's say the shadchan was deliberately deceived. And then after the engagement, they discover that there's a medical issue or a psychological issue. So then they have a right to cancel the shidduch, and they can say that it was done under false pretenses, it would seem, and therefore the shadchan would not be entitled to his commission. Even if he was already paid, he'd have to return it, it would seem. I'm trying to figure out, there's a place over here where he also talks about where the shadchan discovers that one side is not planning to pay him. Just give me a second. I know he brought down in one of the footnotes, I can't find it now, but he also said that in the event that someone fails to pay the Shadchan, if the deal hasn't gone through, the Shadchan is not, if the person says, I'm not paying you, after the Shadchan has already worked towards the Shidduch, the Shadchan is not required to follow through with the Shidduch. In other words, he can say, well, if you're not going to pay me, then I'm not doing any more work. Until you agree to pay me, I'm not taking their calls. I'm not doing any more hishtadlus to try to bring this couple together. But at the same time, he's not allowed to proactively damage the relationship that has already started, because that would be unethical and it's also keneged halacha. Okay, so let me just see. Okay, so that's really, I mean, we could spend more time going through it, but we're a small group tonight, so I figure I'll let you off the hook. You may want to just take this and look over some of the footnotes afterwards to see some of the other details about Shadchanis. It's the important thing that I guess the important exercise is don't take it lightly. In other words, if this may be relevant in some situation of a family member, whatever it is, realize that it's halacha l'maisa, that there are times in certain communities where Shadchanis is taken more seriously, other communities where Shadchanis is not taken that seriously, but you should still verify that the Shadchan is not expecting to be paid. You cannot assume just because they're a friend or people don't do it in our circles that you can exempt yourself from paying the Shadchan. Okay? So we'll hold it here for tonight. Questions, comments?
So the warranty deal, if it breaks up, even though you paid out right after Kedusha, let's say 30 days after, 60, 100 days after.
There is no warranty. Once
it.
the wedding is done, the Shadchan is entitled to compensation, even if they don't even make it through Sheva Brachas, right? It's not the Shadchan's fault. You paid the caterer. You can't say the caterer, I want my money back. You paid the florist, you paid the band. Everyone enjoyed the wedding. The Shadchan did his job. Why would you expect him to pay back the money? He did what he was supposed to do. He brought the chassan and kala to the chuppah. It's fair, right? Okay.
Unless it's a religious people.
Okay.